Even though the Chiefs were one of about 6 teams that decided to rest their starters this weekend, they still caught a lot of heat for it. Fans went crazy, even accusing them of trying to lose on purpose to help another team get into the playoffs. But as we'll see in this video, those accusations don't hold up because Andy Reid has been doing this kind of thing for years. So let's break down what actually happened, the key takeaways from this game. Yes, there were some, and more. But first, let's talk about those Chiefs. Heading into the Week 18 finale against Denver, the Chiefs arrived late because their plane was delayed due to the crazy weather in Kansas City. But they had 2 main goals: show as little of their playbook as possible, get out of there without any injuries. And that's pretty much how things went. The Chiefs beat the Broncos 38-0, but this game didn't really matter for Kansas City. They'd already locked up the number 1 seed, and while Denver had to win to make the playoffs, and they did, it wasn't important for the Chiefs. Now, I won't dive into this game the way I usually do because it wasn't a big deal, but there are a few things worth noting. First off, there were no starters, at least not really. Kansas City played a very unusual lineup, especially on the offensive line. DJ Humphries played left tackle. He really needed the reps, and we'll talk more about him later. Then there was Kingsley Sua at left guard. He started the season as the starting left tackle, got benched, and now here he is at guard. It's been a bit of a roller coaster at left tackle this season. Finally, Hunter Norrad was at center, and CJ Hansen played right guard. Finally, at right tackle, we had W. Morris. The interior trio of Joe Toyne, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith played just 1 series, 3 plays, before the offense went 3 and out. Noah Gray was on the field for all 4 snaps, and Xavier Worthy played just 1 snap. As for the rest of the receivers, the only ones who saw significant time were Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Watson, and Nico Rigdio. Rigdio made a few nice catches and led the group in receiving yards. Peyton Hendershot was next on the receiving list and played the most snaps among the tight ends. Noah Gray had 4 snaps, while Hendershot took most of the rest. At running back, Carson Steele, who played a hybrid fullback running back role, led the rushing attack with 8 carries. Samaj Perine got some touches as well, but it was clear the offense was thin, with no Xavier Worthy, no Noah Gray, no starting offensive linemen, and no big names like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, or Isaiah Pacheco. It was basically, Carson, go out there and survive. As for the QB play, Carson was 10 for 17 with 98 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and he was sacked 4 times. The offense never found a rhythm, never made it into the red zone, converted just 1 third down, and got dominated in time of possession. 18 minutes for the Chiefs, nearly 42 minutes for the Broncos. On the defensive side, Turk Wharton and Mike Dana barely played. The starting defensive line, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, and Trent McDuffie, along with linebackers Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquill, and Justin Reed, were all out. Shamari Connor played for a bit before being listed as questionable with a shoulder injury. I'll talk more about him later. So the starting defensive front wasn't out there, and instead we saw Felix Anudike-Uzomah, Charles Amu, Mike Dana, Marlon Tuipulotu, and Derek Nanati getting most of the snaps. Joshua Uche and Blake Lynch also saw some action, with Lynch playing 25 snaps. If you're wondering who the heck is Blake Lynch, well, he's a linebacker who was signed to the practice squad just a week ago. As for the rest of the defense, linebacker Cam Jones led all defensive players in snaps, and Leo Chenal saw quite a bit of action as well. In the secondary, we saw a lot of action from Nazeeh Johnson and Joshua Williams, especially at cornerback. Keith Taylor and Roland Wallace also got some good reps. The standout player in the secondary, though, was rookie safety Jaden Hicks. He made a few impressive plays, and it's clear he has a bright future with the team. Now, let's be real, the defense didn't have a great day either. Broncos quarterback B. Nix went 26 for 29 with 321 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and no sacks. He also led the team in rushing yards. Cortland Sutton nearly hit 100 yards receiving, and Mims and V were also big contributors. Speaking of V, he's the guy who caught that wild touchdown that bounced off 2 Chiefs defenders in the back of the end zone. Somehow he managed to catch it. It was one of the most bizarre touchdown grabs I've ever seen. As for Denver's offense, they were pretty efficient. They went 4 for 5 in the red zone, 10 for 14 on third downs, and on the 2 failed third down attempts, they converted both of their fourth down tries. The Chiefs' secondary is still a bit of a concern, especially at cornerback. Outside of Trent McDuffie, there were some struggles. Joshua Williams and Nazeeh Johnson got a lot of snaps, but they did give up some plays. Kansas City might be hoping and praying that cornerback Jalen Watson, who was just activated off IR last week, will return in time for the playoffs. His 21-day window to return from injury just opened, so we'll see what happens. If Watson can get back, it'll be a huge help, as the secondary could be the biggest concern heading into the postseason. So after all that, the Chiefs lost 38-0 in a game that the coaching staff treated almost like a preseason game in terms of the game plan. The Chiefs' game plan was extremely vanilla, and when I say very, I mean very. They weren't about to show anything on film against Denver, especially since they could potentially face them again in a couple of weeks in the playoffs. Now, I know Denver's the 7th seed, and honestly, I don't expect them to get past the Buffalo Bills, but in the NFL, anything can happen. But even with all that, there were a few takeaways worth discussing. Believe it or not, this game did offer some insights, including the playoff picture and who the Chiefs are most likely to play next. And then there's the controversy about fans, especially Bengals fans, accusing the Chiefs of throwing the game on purpose. Yes, the Chiefs lost 38-0 in a game that didn't matter, but let's break down some key takeaways. First, DJ Humphries at left tackle. He did a decent job against a tough Denver pass rush. His PFF, Pro Football Focus grade, is pretty low, but honestly, I think PFF can be a bit off sometimes. For example, they graded him poorly, but I watched every snap, and I think he gave up fewer pressures than PFF claims. They said he allowed 6 pressures. I think it was more like 3. He also gave up a couple of sacks, but again, this was against an elite Denver pass rush at Mile High Stadium. Plus, Humphries was knocking off rust after returning from an ACL injury and a hamstring issue that had kept him out for weeks. On top of all that, he was playing next to Kingsley Sua at left guard, not Joe Toyne, who is one of the best guards in football. Considering all of this, I think DJ Humphries performed pretty well overall. The good news is that DJ Humphries was able to shake off some more rust, and his hamstring held up well. He should be good to go and could even start in the divisional round of the playoffs. The question is, should the Chiefs stick with DJ Humphries at left tackle and Joe Toyne at left guard, or should they use DJ as an emergency depth piece and put Mike Sendo back at left guard, like they did when Humphries was out? Personally, I think the Chiefs will go with DJ Humphries at left tackle and move Joe Toyne back to left guard. This would not only solidify the offensive line, but also help the running game. But I trust Andy Reid and his staff to evaluate the tape and roll with the 5 best linemen they see fit. If things start to get shaky in the playoffs, they can always switch Joe Toyne back to left tackle if needed. Now, I'm slightly concerned about Harrison Butker, but it's not a major worry, just a small one. Since coming back from IR, Butker has missed a field goal or extra point in 3 out of the 4 games he's played. He missed a field goal against the Browns, an extra point against the Steelers, and a 51-yard attempt against the Broncos in the season finale. Not all of these misses were easy kicks, though. For example, the extra point he missed was backed up 15 yards due to a penalty. Before going on IR, Butker was pretty reliable. He was 19 for 20 on extra points and 18 for 20 on field goals, with only 2 misses from 50-plus yards, one of which was over 60 yards. Since his return, things have looked a bit shakier, but I'm hoping it's just a fluke. With more reps in the next couple of weeks, and with some rest, I think he'll return to his pre-surgery form. Finally, I've seen some people criticize Carson Wentz, calling him garbage, and saying the Chiefs should bring back Chad Henne. Well, I hate to break it to you. Chad Henne retired. He's not coming back. I don't think the Chiefs wanted him to leave, but he was done playing. That being said, Wentz is still an upgrade over Blaine Gabbert, even though he's a backup for a reason. He's not going to perform like Patrick Mahomes would, especially when he's behind an offensive line that's never played together before, facing a top 3 pass rush in the NFL, and with no key playmakers to throw to. Wentz also looked a little rusty out there, considering he hadn't played in a game since preseason, but I do believe he'll perform better with the starting offensive line and weapons like Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins to throw to. As for Carson Wentz and Travis Kelce to throw passes to, I wouldn't be overly concerned about Wentz's performance. The best case scenario, however, is that we don't see Wentz at all the rest of this season. That would mean Patrick Mahomes stayed healthy, which of course gives the Chiefs their best shot at winning playoff games. Now, I have to address this absolutely ludicrous idea that the Chiefs intentionally threw the game just to eliminate the Cincinnati Bengals from the playoffs. The Broncos won by a landslide, which knocked the Bengals out, and they ended up with the same 9-8 record as they did last year. This time with Joe Burrow, last year with Jake Browning. But, jokes aside, the real issue for the Bengals was their defense, which is why they fired their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, today. But I digress. The funny part is, people were posting all over saying the Chiefs were scared of the Bengals sneaking into the playoffs as a 7th seed, and that's why they rested their starters and intentionally lost. But here's the thing. The Ravens, Bills, Texans, Eagles, and Rams all rested their starters this weekend too. Yet, somehow the Chiefs are the only ones accused of being afraid. It's pretty common for teams to rest starters when playoff seeding is already locked in. If the Bengals had lost to the Steelers earlier on Saturday and were eliminated a day sooner, guess what? The Chiefs still would have rested their starters. Why? Well, for one thing, the Chiefs had a really early Week 6 bye, followed by 3 games in 11 days from December 15th to December 25th. With the top seed already locked up, this game literally didn't matter. The starters needed rest, and it made total sense to give them a break. I honestly don't care that the Chiefs lost 38-0. Sure, it would have been nice to see the Chiefs' second string put up a better fight against a solid Denver team that needed the win to get in, but Andy Reid doesn't care about that, and neither should we. Here's a perfect example. 20 years ago, the Eagles had the #1 song. 1 seed, rested their starters in the last week, and got blown out 38-10 by the Bengals. Guess who the head coach was? Yep, Andy Reid. It's gotten so ridiculous that even an investigative reporter from ESPN, Don Vanetta Jr., weighed in on his Twitter account, saying that the Chiefs took a dive and it was a lowlight of the NFL season. He also suggested the Chiefs might have been trying to block the Bengals from the playoffs. It's an awful take, especially for an investigative reporter who clearly didn't do his research. As we just saw, Andy Reid has been doing this for years. This isn't new. To sum it up, no, the Chiefs were not concerned if the Broncos, Bengals, or Dolphins made the playoffs as the 7th seed. Their goal was to get out of Week 18 healthy and give the starters some extra rest. Here's a good example of why that's important. The Ravens might not have Zay Flowers for the wild card round, and the Packers may be without Christian Watson, who could have torn his ACL. Players can get hurt on any snap, so if you can rest your guys in Week 18, you do it. That's what the Chiefs did, and that's what matters most. The only injury in this game was Shamari Connor, but Andy Reid said afterward that Connor would be fine. The X-ray on his collarbone came back negative. Good news on Shamari Connor's injury. It's more muscle-related than anything else, so he should be fine. That's a big relief. As Week 18 wraps up, I'm a bit sad to say that the regular season is officially over. But here's the exciting part. The playoffs are set, and we're in for some fantastic games starting this weekend. Let's take a look at the AFC seeding first. Broncos are the 7th seed, Steelers are 6th Chargers, our 5th Texans, our 4th Ravens, our 3rd Bills, our 2nd. And of course, the Chiefs are the 1st seed. For the NFC, the seeding looks like this. Packers are 7th, Commanders are 6th. Vikings are 5th after a rough loss to the Lions. Rams are 4th, Buccaneers, our 3rd Eagles are 2nd. And the Lions finished at the top, earning the first-round bye, just like the Chiefs in the AFC. Now that the teams are set, here's when the games are scheduled. Saturday, Chargers at Texans, midday. Steelers at Ravens, Saturday evening on Amazon Prime. Sunday, Broncos at Bills noon. Packers at Eagles, 3:30 p.m. Commanders at Buccaneers, 7 p.m. Monday, Vikings at Rams, evening game. But let's focus specifically on the AFC playoff picture. The Chiefs will face the lowest remaining seed after this weekend's wild card games. If things go as expected, the Bills should take care of the Broncos, though in the playoffs, anything can happen. I also think the Ravens should beat the Steelers and the Chargers should beat the Texans. If that's how it plays out, here's what the divisional round will look like. The Ravens will travel to Buffalo. The Chargers will come to Arrowhead to face the Chiefs for the 3rd time this season. Divisional matchups are never easy, especially when you're facing a team for the third time in 1 year. The Chiefs have already beaten the Chargers twice this season. In Week 4, the Chiefs won 17-10, but the Chargers were missing both starting offensive tackles, and Justin Herbert was playing with an ankle injury. In Week 14, the Chiefs won 19-17, thanks to a last-minute 31-yard field goal by Matthew Wright. Can the Chiefs do it a third time? I believe they can, but we'll have to wait and see how things unfold this week. Once those games are over, we'll start breaking it all down and gearing up for the divisional round.